Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video has to go with a little bit of a backstory because this is one of the most fascinating wood builds I've ever made. So for many of us, a few weeks ago was Veterans Day, Armistice Day, Remembrance Day, and I have a lot of veterans who watch my channel. And to all of you, before I go any further, thank you for your service. What I was asked by somebody was they were putting up a Veterans Day memorial and they wanted an ammunition box. Could I build that? I said, sure. How difficult can that be? It's just a box, a wooden box. Well, then I started doing some research and I was completely fascinated, first of all, by how many different kinds of wooden boxes there were for just ammunition, but also specifically for World War II, what they were using back then. So it needed to be somewhat authentic. So I did a bunch of research and this is the box that I came up with. Now I've already built that box and it's gone on, but because it was so fascinating, I thought this would be a great idea for people to see just what goes into something like this. Completely interesting to me, and I think you'll find it as fascinating as I did. Far more than just a simple wooden box. In this case, nobody cares what the outside looks like. What's important is that it's square and even on the inside, because it's a purpose-built box for storing and for delivering ammunition from factories to troops. And there's all sorts of things that go into this. So let's jump in to how the build went for me for this one. So to get started, I need to take out my good carbide blade out of my table saw because I'm not going to risk an expensive, good quality blade. Instead, I'm going to put in one of my 7¼ inch circular saw blades, which of course fit in table saws, and I'll use that. And that also means I have to put in a special splitter, the same thickness as that. Now, pallet wood, of course, is never true dimensional, and I can see it's easily not 3/4 inch, and I knew that. So I'm going to go down to the next size, and it's even a tiny bit thicker than 5/8. So it's an oddball size, which is no surprise, but that's okay. We'll be able to work with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is install the blade and start ripping all of these at 2" and 4", and that way I'll have combinations of 2s and 4s that I can build with. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now comes time for assembly. Now that I've cut all of the pieces, and I believe they're all in the right lengths and widths. And so this is the jig that I'm using. And depending on how they would have done this, they might have had 2 or 3 different jigs or more. I'm doing it with one jig, and I'm showing you how you can do this kind of thing with only one jig, and a little bit of good luck. So I've cut all the pieces. Here's the ends. These are the sides, and these are the top and bottom. So they would have gone in a process like this. And depending on how big the facility was that they were building these boxes in, they might have had 2 or 3 people doing different things. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting them together, and I'll do a close-up so you can see what I'm doing. I'm also going to be doing some hammering, so I'm probably going to turn the sound off so that you're not listening to this banging going on, and there won't be any commentary, of course, during that time too. So let's jump over to here. Oh, I should also tell you before I get started too, on the ends, the first end, I actually etched this with my laser, and I didn't really like the look of it, and I didn't want to take up a lot of time doing the words here, because they would have had templates and just used a paintbrush and just sort of daubed that on there. But I tried to do it with a laser, and it just didn't turn out right with this kind of wood. So that's just what that is. All right, here we go. So in the first jig here, I'm doing the ends first, and you'll see later on why this is important. So I've got these 2 pieces here, and I have in there, they're marked end, so this all goes together like so. So when I put the pieces in here, I'll just do the first one so you can see what this is going to look like. The second one with the etching in, I'll do that off camera. So you put the ends in like that, those 3 pieces, and these would all be pre-cut. So they go like that, and bingo bango, just like that. And all we need to do now is drive nails in here. And I'm only going to drive my nails because they're too long for this pallet wood, of course. And I don't want to drive it into my jig here because it'd be too hard to drive out. So what I'm only going to drive them in part way, and then I'll lift it out, drive them through all of the way off camera, and then we'll turn them over because, of course, we want to make this really sturdy. So let's just start doing some nailing here. So first of all, you have a jig. So you can make all of these boxes. You can make different sizes. Of course, you can adjust the length. You can make multiple jigs, or you can have one jig with inserts like I did. So you've got the top there, and you've seen some of these. The end was in there, and you can see that I have the ends marked, and that was so that it allowed for that piece in there, so that would fit in there, and the 2 pieces that allowed for the uprights when you were making the ends. So the jig, you could make multiple jigs, you could make one jig with some inserts to go into it, and all of your pieces, all of this wood would all be pre-cut because you would know the exact sizes, the cutaways, the length, the width, and you would have stacks of wood for sides, and they would probably, a lot of the pictures that I saw, they often had like just 2 boards. They had very wide boards very often. So you would have boards that would be cut to the right length. So all of your sides would be pre-cut to the right width and the right length and thickness, and they would just be stacked. So all you would have to do is pile them onto a jig, do some quick nailing and put it together, and then pass it on to the next station if that was it. Or if you were working alone or just a couple of you, you might only have a couple of jigs to put this together. So lots of different options, but just some really neat ideas. Okay, so there's all the nails sticking up, and now they would have just pounded them over just like that. And that will make a very strong, if you've ever tried to pull bent over nails out, you can see how strong this would be now. So I'm just going to carry on. Now the next thing is to put on the sides. And they probably would have had, I'm sure they would have had another jig for that. I didn't want to make another jig just for this, but it would make a lot of sense to do that. So I'm just going to line this up and drive some nails. Now the nice thing with this is I can drive these nails straight through. Okay, now the next thing is to put the top and the bottom on. I'm starting with the bottom, and the bottom is going to fit. It's nice how this fits in here. Amaze myself sometimes. Is going to fit on all the insides of this. So let's see here. This will all come together here like that. And still think I'm in the furniture business here, making things too tight. Pull up this one here. There we go. All right. Okay. Now, the reason that this sits tight or it sits inside like this, these are, you can see that these are proud here, but I think the reason that they want this flat here is because these are going to be stacked. So if you put boards in here, it's going to be, and you'll see in a minute how that would be not as, maybe not as stable. So I'm just going to go ahead now and nail the bottom on here. And next is the top, and this is just as fascinating as the rest. So in the models that I saw, they had these cutaways that straddled these upward pieces here. And I looked at these and I thought, oh, and then they had these cross members on here. And you need something, because this lid is going to be movable on and off, you need something to strap these together. Quick and simple. Again, more nails, nailed together, nice and strong. And for a couple of reasons that you would have something like this. First of all, it's easy to take the lid off if you can grab these, but also you've got these that you can grab here on either side to get the lid off. But it's also for stacking. Remember I talked about the bottom is flat? That way you can get the top of the next one is going to be under here. So remember, a lot of these are carried by hand. They're loaded by hand into the back of a truck. They're unloaded by hand from the back of a truck. And some of them had handles on the sides, but a lot of them had nothing. So you would just have to pick it up. But look, now you've got a place where you can grip underneath here to lift these things up to carry them. I just thought the whole thing is just so amazingly well thought out. Anyway, let me show you how this would go together, another jig. And of course, when you're putting these together, if you've got a team of people doing it, you'd have all sorts of different jigs doing this, or you could have one person doing it. And here's what I did, again, modifying the same jig that's doing everything. And I've even labeled it. It says top, if you can see it somewhere there. So that sits in there like that. And now the pieces, the cutaways, go into the cutaway. And the same on the other side, the middle like that. And now I can nail this on a flat surface, so you can kind of see what that looks like here. So I'm just going to go ahead now and nail that together, and that should fit on that lid. All going well. That should fit on that lid perfectly, or on that box perfectly. So let's do some nailing here. And now, let's move that over so you can see that fitting on there. And there that is. What a super idea. So well thought out. Now, let me go through the features of this, because this is just, I think this is just a remarkable little box, functional box. And so the box itself, of course, it's made out of wood. And it doesn't have to be, it can be any wood at all. Wood is, for something like this, if you're building ammunition boxes for World War II, they could be built anywhere in any of the Allied countries. Wood is available anywhere, and it's quick, it's easy. As I say, you can make jigs for it. You can make it bigger or smaller, because these are, of course, they're not all the same length. But you have to remember there are no, and there's no machinery in the field that can lift this stuff. So you need something that people can, soldiers can pick up and lift and move, because there are no forklifts around to lift this stuff. So it needs to be small enough that one or two people can handle this. It's easy to take apart. You don't have to struggle with it. It's strong. It'll withstand, in a lot of cases, falling off the back of a truck if that ever happened to it, and it would still withstand all of this. And because it's wood, it's easy to make for people that aren't even woodworkers. You can set this up so that people could assemble this stuff and help out with the war effort just by putting together something as simple as ammunition boxes. The other advantage to having wood, if you've seen pictures of soldiers in the field, and if maybe you were one of them, these were so often used as little tables, seats, and in the winter, especially in Europe during the winter, during World War II, these would have been burned as for fuel, for not necessarily for cooking food, but maybe for warming up some tea, and certainly for keeping warm in the trenches. So the wood was a valuable commodity to use for all sorts of different reasons. If you didn't use it in time, it's just going to collapse and disintegrate and become part of the soil, because that's what wood does. So just so many different things, and I love the design of it. You've got handles on the top to lift stuff off, and in many cases you might be taking it off and putting it back on, so it's quick and easy. And of course it's reversible. You know, you can't put the thing on wrong. It's always going to go on correctly. They're going to stack nicely. So many benefits of something like this. And as I said before, sometimes some of them I've seen that had little handles like this across, a little smaller than this of course, but and I've also seen rope in there. But because these things would have been stacked higher, you know, this little part would have been on one underneath it. Now you can get your hand underneath to carry these and stack them once the truck wants to unload and go back for more. Just all in all, the whole thing is just an amazing design, well put together, well thought out, just perfect for that time and that purpose. Well, that concludes my video for today, and just such a fascinating build that I thought many of you, especially those of you who are veterans, would be interested in seeing sort of what goes into something. And maybe some of you were involved in building or making or developing some of the many different boxes, ammunition boxes. It also confirmed with me my hatred for pallet wood, and I did a video a couple of years ago or so on why I quit using pallet wood, and this was no exception. It's got so many problems with it. The only thing I use pallet wood is my table saw and a 7 1/4 inch construction blade, because otherwise it's just terrible on your tools. But it got the job done for this, and it looks somewhat used anyway, and for this it did the job. So I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.